So I've had an interesting week of jobs that I'd like to share with you. Every day this week I had something a little bit different. Some of them were more complicated than others, and this particular one, I got a job to clean up the whole backyard and work on these two holly oaks, Quercus ilex. And they were in pretty rough shape. Matter of fact, all the plants in this yard were in very rough shape. The limbs on this particular holly oak, many of them were drying out and many of them were dead, and it was my job to do the best job I possibly could. I don't often shoot videos of myself. There's a little selfie I shot up there. Orange tree. I want you to take note of the environment. It's very dry. The trees do not get much irrigation at all. And there's a lot of things that I want you to take notice of. There's drying out branches and twigs, but there's also a very prominent discoloration of the leaves. They're all very, very yellow. There's a few oranges that are orange colored that are on the tree. They're actually overripe, and there's a few younger ones that are coming out, the green ones. But the volume of fruit on this tree is quite minimal. But take a look at this. Rocks are not mulch. I want to repeat that. Rocks are not mulch. I found this in the tree, which was kind of interesting. There was this, let me focus that better. Okay. There was this interesting hole that something had dug into this orange, and I don't know what it is, because I honestly have never seen that before. So I picked a few oranges thinking, I could have an orange for lunch, and I thought, well, some of them were soft, some of them were a little bit rotten. They clearly were overripe. And the nice thing about an orange tree is you can often pick oranges that are overripe and they're still pretty good. There's that one with the hole in it, and you can see that not very much on the inside was consumed. So I don't really know what it was that made that hole. But I did eat one of them, and it was okay. It was a little bit old. There's another part of this job that there was a number of Pittosporum eugeneoides plants. They were kind of designated as a hedgerow along one side. Two of them were completely dead, and this one was still green. And I told the client that we had to cut it down. It was almost gone, and I sent this to him to show him just how dried out it was. This is yet another job. This is a very interesting job. I was called out here because of an incident. There was a fairly large limb that snapped. There it is. You can see that big snapped limb. That's up there quite a ways, so it doesn't look too big from this video image right here, but that was a big section of this Quercus lobata valley oak. And at this time of the year, we're in the heat of the summer. These trees are loaded with acorns. Last year was a mast year, and this is a mast year as well. So there's an abundance of acorns that are excessive, and they're still not full-sized. These trees also had some very old cables that were installed in them, and they were really not appropriate for the trees. They were redundant. They were not useful at all. One thing I always impress upon my climbers is to do a walk around on the tree before you get up there. At least look at it. Look for any evidence of fungus, any evidence of decay, any holes, any insect frass, anything that would be a reason that there may be a problem. Now this wall had me concerned. I thought, oh my gosh, did they cut all these roots? And later on, the client said, I've got some photos from a long time ago. Let's get them out and look at them. And I'll show you those photos further on in this video. They're quite interesting. They were from 1945. So our job here is to lighten this up. There's that break. You can see it's a pretty big limb. It was probably 12 inches in diameter, but it was very, very heavy. But it was the high quantity, excessive quantity of very, very heavy acorns that caused this to break. That, coupled with the heat, we've had a heat wave, so wood becomes very brittle and very I can't say dried out, but the flexibility decreases. And this was part of the tree limb that fell. It came down and hit the fence, broke the fence, hit the neighbor's roof. Not too much damage, but they didn't want the rest of the tree to fall. That was kind of cute. That was a kid's toy in the yard. I had to throw that in there. Back to work. So what I often do is look for other areas of past wounding. And there's another one here. And you look up the branch and you can see that this tree has been worked on a number of times in its life. On the right-hand side, there's a wound. There's another wound. There's an older wound. All of these are adding up. There's a big wound. Somebody took off a big section a long time ago. All of these areas can ultimately equate to decay pockets that can make the limb weaker. So, we talked about it. Jorge decided to do the climbing, and I decided to set a rope right there. That's the target. I'm using the APTA, the air-powered. Oh, almost. That was a good shot, though. I'm always trying to figure exactly how much pressure it takes to make a really accurate shot. Jorge said, I'm going to throw my throw ball myself. I said, okay, well, I got to video this. I don't know if it made him nervous having the video, but he's usually a much better shot than he was today. It's hard. It's really hard. And, this shot was up about, 60 feet or so, maybe 70 feet. And it's shot after shot after shot. Yeah, I think he shot, about 6 times here. And I kept saying, do you want me to shoot it? Nope, I don't want it. He's a little bit stubborn that way, but I understand. Oh,
crud. He landed right on top of the branch. I thought it was the perfect shot, too. Oh,
another bad shot. Maybe he did 7 shots here. This is a real art. People that are good with a throw ball, my hat's off to you. I used to be pretty good with a throw ball, but I've got kind of a bum shoulder from a dislocation that happened years ago. Yes, there, he got it. Good shot.
Damn. You hit the branch
again. He didn't get it. He did it again. That one just hit the branch. It was a good, close shot. Now he's getting a little bit wild there.
Oh, just missed it. Damn. So close.
Come on, Jorge, you can do it. Oh. I think he's getting tired. I'm showing you these because a lot of you are not very adept with a throw ball, and it does take a lot of practice.
Yes.
I have a hard time. My shoulder socket is not quite what it used to be, and I find that I oftentimes miss my throw. He got it on that one. I think that was the 7th throw there. Usually he gets it in 2 or 3 shots, but the higher it is, the harder it is.
Also, this cord right here has a little bit more weight to it, so when you flip it, it flips a little bit better. That one, really hard to flip.
Personally, I now prefer either the big shot slingshot, which I have, or more often I use this air-powered cannon, the APTA. And the more practice I get with that, the better I am with it. Here, this is my 2nd shot. And I got it. That was a tight little target that I was shooting for. And sometimes when you're shooting straight up, it's really, really hard to toss the throw ball. From a distance, the throw ball generally has a bit of an arc to it. And a lot of times there's a bit of skill in maneuvering that ball through the branches, getting it to swing so it comes over the branches where you want it to go. There's also a trick to tying the rope on. You don't want to tie a regular knot because it can hang up on branches as it goes up and over. So it's a series of clove hitches. Actually, I could have done one more clove hitch on the very, very end. So because this tree is so incredibly dangerous, it's ready to break, we talked it over and we wanted to use 2 ropes. The blue rope on the other side is what he's putting a lot of his weight on. It was a little bit higher and off to the other side. We've got a 30-foot ladder that kind of simplified things, but the ladder in itself is kind of a pain to work with. So fully extended, he can get up about 27 feet or so because the ladders overlap each other. And what he's doing here is he's pulling up on one rope as he's letting out on the other rope, because the positioning that he needed to be in to get up to this area of incredibly potentially fragile branches, if he had gone out there just with one rope and not been tied in with this blue rope, here's a few stills that show it a little bit better. This was really complicated. It may not look too hard in these images, but you're constantly working your way up through different aspects of the job. And now he's at a point where he's got to get up and over this bulge here. Bear in mind, we never use spurs when we're climbing trees. Use spurs when we remove a tree. You don't want to damage the tree to take care of the tree. And to this day, I still see tree guys out there that they can't climb a tree without using spurs, and they're just screwing them up. It infuriates me that it has not become almost a recognized across the board rule that we professionals insist on making it true. It should not be something that we see, but I see it all the time. I can't tell you how often I get into a tree and it's got fresh spur marks in it from last year. Now Jorge is pretty good at tossing the rope and retrieving the other end using the pull saw. And I want you to remember that you don't want to grab hold of the rope itself with the saw part. You want to use the hook. So he threw a little bit of a weight back over there, a monkey's fist, and he pulled it around with the hook part because you don't want to pull the fibers of the rope out. There was a few of those acorns. The amount of weight on these branches was tremendous. I could not believe how heavy these branches were. We decided to make lots and lots of little cuts. I put the ladders up there to protect the fence and a couple of rose bushes that were up underneath it. But we weren't about to go out there and rope down big cuts at all. It was just too much of a hazard, too dangerous. So we opted to cut lots of small cuts and let them come down. And there is a certain amount of luck involved. Every climber that's out there will understand that there's always a certain amount of luck. You can be really talented and really skilled at dropping branches and working through the tree, but there's always a little bit of luck involved in not hitting that sprinkler or not hitting that light, grazing off of another tree. And you'll see, you can hear by the weight of some of these branches when they come down and hit the ladder or hit the ground, just how incredible they're probably 3 times as heavy as they would be without the acorns. Did you kind of get the feel of that coming down? We had to get enough weight off of this side of the tree to make it so the client felt comfortable, the neighbor felt comfortable, that we felt like we did enough, because a lot of it is second guessing. You're making judgment calls, but you don't want to screw up the appearance of the tree either. You want to leave the tree presentable, but get enough end weight off so that you're not going to lose a big branch. Because if they lost another branch out here, that really would have been too much. It's sad that the other branch broke because that kind of filled in that part of the tree. There was a few impacts on a privet tree, but the privet was dying, and the consensus was nobody really cared about the privet. So we tried our best, but we did hit it a few times. We didn't really damage the privet too much, but it actually worked in our favor because it, whilst these branches were getting hung up in the tree, they were also being slowed down somewhat. That wasn't even a big branch, and it was heavy. And some of these branches that we had to cut off, Jorge cut off, are fairly good sized pieces of wood. You know, that was just a piece of firewood there, but I mean, look at how high up we are. There's a good shot with him behind the sun there, or in front of the sun. I mean, he is way out there on the end of this fishing pole type of a branch. I took a few stills while I was up there, while he was up there. Oh, my son showed up to help me out a little bit. This is Trent, my youngest son. He hasn't worked with me very much, so I asked him if he'd come out. And you can see that he took over the camera a little bit, so you get to see me in the videos for a change. I'm doing some roping here. I was kind of teaching him some of the different ways of roping, and we're using another tree as some of the friction. I suppose I could have used a porter wrap as well, but you know, this is, you know, a lot of things we do are old school, and a lot of things we do, we take advantage of what's in the yard. And I know some people say, you know, if you rope around a trunk that you can damage the trunk. On a thick bark tree like this over here, I really rarely see any damage whatsoever. So yes, on a thin bark tree, that's true. But I don't know. It's the way tree work has been done for a long time, and we still implement utilizing friction around branches, limbs, trees, other things as well. This limb was really heavy. I was surprised. I want you to take note of how this is tied off. We're using a ring, and the rope where he's cutting is really quite close. Quite often we'll pull the rope back and have some slack while we make that particular cut. I was a little bit nervous watching him do that, thinking, oh gosh, I hope he doesn't cut our rope. But he was being very careful, and there was enough of a gap there. I would say that each of these limbs, these pieces of wood, weighed 150 to 200 pounds for a 3-foot section of this oak wood. I know because we wheeled them out with the dolly, and I couldn't pick them up. They were quite heavy. You could stand them up and put the dolly under them, but that was it. Note that I didn't stop it. I let it go all the way slowly to the ground. The last thing I wanted to do was to jerk on the branch that he was on, and that's a skill that takes time to learn. You know, in many of my videos, you'll see where I say, you know, let it run, and that's very important. And the communication between the man on the ground working the rope and the climber, you've really got to be in sync, and you've got to pay very close attention. Now, a lot of times I like to do a hip belay. This goes way back to my rock climbing days, early days of rock climbing. This was a very common way of belaying the person that you're working with. You don't see this sort of stuff anymore because most people use tools, gadgets, figure of eights, or gree or any number of different types of belay devices. As a matter of fact, modern rock climbers don't even know how to do this. But it's a great way to manage something heavier, so you take the friction around your butt, not your waist. I've got that down lower on my butt, and it allows me to slow it down, but I can control the descent without it going through my hands real fast. I don't even have my gloves on here. I was in pretty good control. Later on I did put the gloves on, but if you're careful and have enough friction set up, you know, you don't really need the gloves. That is also a basis for how tough your hands are. My hands are quite calloused, somebody with softer hands, it might hurt them a little bit more, but I guess I'm used to it. I don't know. There we go. See, even that one, I let it run. Slowed it all the way down, friction around my butt. No worries, no problems whatsoever. Jorge's cleaning up this cut here. I want you to take note of the size of the stub.
It just broke from the weight?
There isn't any decay in here. Yeah, it just broke from all that acorn weight. Look at how big that limb is too.
That's what the limb looked like where it fractured. There was no decay that we could see, so it was purely the weight of the acorns, as well as the brittleness due to this being done in the heat of the year. The heat made the branches more brittle. There's a condition known as summer limb drop that is, it's a bit of a phenomenon, but it's recognized that a lot of big limb failures happen during really hot weather. Listen to this. Oh, the acorns just went flying everywhere. There's my son Trent helping out. The dolly is a very useful tool when you're moving wood. Oh, this is interesting. I told you that the homeowner had some pictures of these trees, and they were dated 1945. And there was actually 3 trees here. There's that wall that you saw in one of those pictures. So in 1945, the brick wall was there. That's a deodar cedar in the front yard that is now dying. And there's the trees. That's not a great shot, but it was interesting that I was able to get some dates on the trees. So those photos were almost 80 years old, and the trees were still significant. So when you look at a tree and try to judge how old it is, if you have any historical records, that can go a long way to giving you an idea of the age of the tree, how fast it grows. Look at the acorns. That's just one pile. I mean, we had piles all over the place. I think that accumulatively, including all the acorns on the branches that we chipped, there was easily 1,000 pounds of acorns that we took out of this tree. And that's the finished product, which doesn't look too bad. I'm very happy with what we were able to achieve on this. And at the same time, the neighbor said, would you go look at this tree over on the other side? And I've got to bid this, and underneath this whole live oak is an ocean of solar panels. That's the heavy side, all finished. That's the other side. We didn't take off near as much on the branches growing straight up. This is kind of cool. I was playing with my camera. I found this insect, and I was doing some close-ups with the new iPhone 13. And can anybody identify this insect? I could not. I was able to go online and figure it out. Another job. This was Friday's job.
Just watch out for his plant.
This is a tree that the client wanted to remove. There was a considerable area of decay on the base of this tree, on the trunk of the tree, and they asked me to help them get a permit to remove them. And I think I talked them out of removing it. I said, if we get enough weight off of the top of the tree, I believe we can make this tree safe enough. They were both quite dubious about this. You can see that big decay area, and the tree leaned, and it was kind of going towards the neighbor's house. And a lot of times people make decisions about taking a tree out based on fear. So I talked it over with them, and I said, let's take a significant amount of the top of the tree out, which goes against all my ethics and all my values about proper tree care. Now, I do not like topping trees. But the big however is the alternate function, or the alternative for topping this tree or reducing it, getting all the weight out, would have been removing it. Now this is kind of cool. Jorge was going up there, and he went through a hole, and he put his handsaw in the hole to see how deep it was, and something growled at him. I'll show you a little bit later on what it was, but it really freaked him out. Here's a limb that he cut off, and I wanted to show you the amount of decay, but there's also a lot of tissue on this. Did I tell you what kind of a tree this is? This is a California pepper, Shinus mole, and they're very unusual trees. They often grow very large bulbous trunks, and there was two of them. Oh, there he is. That's what was in the hole. A possum. It turned out to be a mama possum with babies in there. So he took this picture. It's a little blurry, but so we had to work the whole time wondering if we were going to scare this possum out of the tree. So we kept waiting for it to come running down. And we took a significant amount of weight out of the tree. I was piling up branches on the ground to create little softening spots because we had to drop branches on their brand new sod lawn. I leaned up the ladder against the fence. Cool old house. This is over 100-year-old house. It's kind of a boxy looking mansion in an old part of San Jose. Really, really nice house. The people that live here did a lot of work restoring this place. And here's that tree, or is up on the other portion of it. And like I said before, it kind of bothers me when I think about how we altered this tree. But if we didn't do that, I'm sure they would have wanted to remove it. So Trent's not with me on this job, so sometimes if I want to get a little bit of myself in the video, I'll just set the camera down. This time I set it in the grass so you can see the grass in front of us. This was a bit of a challenge to get the roping because some of the branches he was cutting, what I have to do is I actually have to hold tight for a little bit longer and then anticipate the swing and then release it so that the branch will come down on the side where I need it to come. You'll see here what I did. Okay, once I got enough weight over it, then I released it again. But had I stopped it completely at that point, it would have just hung up. You have to anticipate the momentum of the branches, and a lot of times that will work with you. But how you manage the rope goes a long ways into getting branches down through thicker trees. I mean, I wasn't perfect on every one. We did have a couple of them hang up, but for the most part, I was able to get the weight of these big, wide branches down through the tree.
Is this a good target?
I'm getting closer to the end of this video. This is a really long video, and if you stuck it out with me, I want to thank you for the time that you put into it. And this is what it looked like at the very end. Kind of sad, but reasonable. These people had some big slabs in the back of the yard. They had a redwood tree removed, and the guy said, "Yeah, I can cut the slabs freehand with my chainsaw." They were rather disappointed. They said, "What do we do with these now?" I said, "Well, we can get an Alaska chainsaw mill out and try to recut them, but most of them are pretty trash now." They were, they had their visions of what they wanted to do. This is the second pepper tree. There is a bit of a decay pocket at the base of it, but I wanted you to see this large bulbous trunk. And this is a significant old tree. It's easily 100 years old. Neat looking trees, so I like them. And that's what it looks like at the end. You will get a lot of suckers, and in a year or two it will take on the semblance of looking like a presentable tree. Oh, this is cool. I saw this yesterday, this big turkey buzzard.
Wow. Well, this was a long, drawn-out video, and if you stuck it out to the very end, I thank you. There's a lot of interesting techniques in this video that I think would be of interest to other climbers, especially less experienced climbers. I know that having a mentor to teach someone how to do tree work is really valuable. And if you don't have a good mentor, oftentimes these videos can be tremendously helpful. What is that behind my head there? Look at that sunflower. Anyway, thanks again. I appreciate all of you for subscribing, and thank you for leaving the comments. Climb safe.